Hello, with me is Ali-reza Bhojani, and he's going to introduce us to the notion of moral rationalism in Islam. Explain.
Hi, Tom. Okay.
Hi, Ali-reza, yes.
Okay, moral rationalism in Islam. As we find across religious traditions and across traditions of non-religious traditions as well, ancient traditions, there's a basic question about the nature of morality. How do we know what is good and what is bad? And what is the nature of morality, actually? And Islam is no different, reflecting debates which have gone on and are often traced all the way back to Plato, with his famous Euthyphro dilemma. You know, is the good that which God commands, or does God command that which is good? So we find this debate in Islam as well. And amongst Muslims, there has always been a trend emphasizing the human ability to understand moral good and moral bad independent of scripture. So what is moral rationalism? Very, very simply, it's the idea that humans have the ability to understand what is morally good and what is morally bad without relying upon revelation.
So in a sense, it's equivalent to what certain strands of Christian thinking would call natural law.
Absolutely. So it has a lot of affinities with natural law thinking, and scholars have actually argued that it was natural law thinking in Islam which was transferred through towards Christian traditions, which have inspired or assisted in the development of trajectories of natural law thinking. But I think it's very, very important to identify that arguably the dominant trend within Islam hasn't been one of moral rationalism. Okay, so the competing theory, which is often stereotyped as a divine command theory, that which is good and that which is bad is known or is defined exclusively through God's command, is of course a very, very important trend in ethical thinking within Islam, associated most strongly with the Asharite school of theology. When it comes to moral rationalism, there's been seeds of moral rationalism throughout the Muslim schools, most strongly associated with the Mu'tazilite school of theology and with the Shia school of thinking in Islam.
And of course, is there a problem among Islamic scholars with the word rationalism? Because when we use the word rationalism in English, it's usually the very opposite of having any respect for theological discourse, or bringing into one's discourse the whole aspect of the divine.
Sure.
But in the way you're using it, it's actually a theistic rationalism. It's very much, how do I know what is good? And in knowing what is good, I somehow know what is the mind of God.
Yeah, you've raised a very, very important point. The rationalism, particularly in a post-Enlightenment environment, is a loaded term for theologians, suggesting something which is unreligious or irreligious or is anti-sacred. But I think in the Islamic concept is very, very different. Even for those proponents of a divine command theory, that reason, rationality is seen as one of the foremost capacities of humankind and a divinely inspired faculty of humankind. So even for the divine command theorists, rationality has a very, very important place as, if not a source of independent moral knowledge, but as a divinely given tool for extrapolating the law, understanding the law, and developing human capacity.
Thank you for exploring this. I know it's just an opening exploration, but it is a very valuable opening exploration, because this is an aspect of Islam that I think non-Islamic scholars have very little awareness of. And yet the whole question of moral rationalism in Islam is probably an area where there could be very fruitful dialogue with traditional natural law theory.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is work going on, actually, comparative work.
And indeed, I happen to know you've actually written a book on this.
That's correct, yes. So I've looked specifically at the implications of moral rationalism within Muslim interpretations of Sharia and the role for reason, okay, as a means of discovering and qualifying the interpretations of texts.
This has been just a momentary introduction to not only an important aspect of Islamic thought, but a very urgent aspect of Islamic thought. If you want to know more, well, you've met Ali-Reza. Go read his book. Thank you.